On Sunday, Ecuadorian presidential candidates began the electoral campaign for the second round of elections. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid called for a strike if the Prime Minister's government does not comply with the order to suspend the dismissal of Israel's security chief Ronen Bar. And Pope Francis has been discharged from the Gemelli Hospital after spending over a month hospitalized due to a respiratory infection. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. National Electoral Council of Ecuador modified the calendar of the second round of elections and moved forward the official start of the campaign to Sunday, March 23rd, the same day of the debate between the candidates. The current president of Ecuador and candidate for National Democratic Action, ADN, Daniel Noboa, and the candidate of the Citizens' Revolution Movement, Luisa González, face again on Sunday in a debate for the ballotage to be held next April 13th. In 2023, during the first debate, González came as a favorite after being in first place in the first round with 33.61% of the votes against Noboa's 23.47%, although it was he who ended up winning the election in the second round. On Sunday's debate, education, health and social security, crime and security, economy, unemployment, as well as governance will be the issues to be discussed in the mandatory meeting. In this context, let's recall the trajectory of the two presidential candidates running in the second round of Ecuadorian elections, among them current President Daniel Noboa, who is opting to be re-elected. Precisely, Noboa, the son of billionaire Álvaro Noboa Pontón and candidate for the National Democratic Action Party, obtained 44.17% of the votes in this first round of elections. During his term in office, he has used presidential decrees to militarize the streets and facilitate the security of businessmen in the ports. His administration has been marked by a multidimensional crisis in the political sphere, but also bringing about economic recession, high levels of insecurity, and energy deficit. His previous electoral campaign was characterized by the violation of constitutional status and the lack of compliance with electoral regulations. Furthermore, in a desperate measure, Noboa militarized the northern and southern borders in the middle of his past electoral run under the pretext of fighting armed groups. For her part, Luisa González, a 47-year-old lawyer and former assemblywoman, is seeking the presidency of Ecuador in the April 13th runoff elections, backed by tight results during the first round and strong popular support. González has two master degrees, one in senior management from the Instituto de Altos Estudios Nacionales and another in international economics from the Complutense University of Madrid. With 44% of the votes obtained in the first round of presidential elections, González proposes a government focused on 5 axes: justice for good living, security and order, economic well-being with equal opportunities, the fight against corruption, and ecological justice and energy transition for a clean and sustainable future. Representing progressive, social and leftist forces, Luisa González has expressed her commitment to the real needs of the people, vowing to ensure access to health, education and giving out credits to encourage youth entrepreneurship. In other news, the government of El Salvador started to receive alleged members of a Venezuelan criminal organization expelled from the United States. Last Sunday, the government of El Salvador received the first deportees from the United States. 238 members of the Tren de Aragua gang and 23 members of the Salvadoran gang Mara Salvatrucha. These deportations respond to the anti-immigrant policy implemented by the President of the United States, Donald Trump. In the next few days, the list of deportees that El Salvador is receiving could multiply, as the White House announced that on Tuesday it will revoke the residency permits of 500,000 migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela. Meanwhile, in the United States, media revealed statements by intelligence agencies proving that criminal gang Tren de Aragua did not operate under Venezuelan government, contradicting the claims of President Donald Trump's administration. Reports detail that the agencies agreed that the gang had no relationship with the Venezuelan government, noting that there was evidence that Venezuelan forces had fought the criminal organization. Agencies such as the CIA and the NSA shared the thesis, concluding that President Donald Trump ignored the reports of his intelligence agencies and invoked the Foreign Enemies Act by declaring that the defunct criminal organization had invaded the United States. In Panama, workers announced new mobilizations against neoliberal measures. Social and trade union leaders announced a program of struggle in rejection of Law 462 that reforms the Social Security Fund. During a press conference, they announced that this Sunday organizations will resume their mobilizations and will congregate on the so-called Cinta Costera, an action that will be complemented with an interaction with social networks. On Saturday, 30th March of this month, a national meeting of leaders will be held to discuss future fighting actions. Law 462 increases the retirement age by 3 years, provides for the privatization of the Social Security Fund, and allows its funds to be turned over to the banks and pension management companies. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back, so stay with us. Welcome back. In Israel, opposition leader Yair Lapid called on Saturday for a strike at all levels if the Prime Minister's government does not comply with the Supreme Court's order to suspend the dismissal of Israel's security chief Ronen Bar. During the demonstration held in Tel Aviv, the leader of the Yesh Atid formation stated that if Netanyahu's executive does not obey the Supreme, it will become a criminal government. Lapid also added that the economy, parliament, courts and local authorities must join the strike, adding that they must not be complicit in the destruction of democracy. Through the protest, the Israelis demanded the Netanyahu regime to stop the attacks on Gaza and reach a comprehensive agreement for the release of the hostages.
If the government of October 7th decides not to obey the court's decision, it will become an outlaw government on that very day, at that very moment.
Lapid also assured that all sectors, with the exception of the security system, should stop work and demonstrate.
If that happens, at that point, the whole country should stop. There is one system that cannot stop, and that is the security system. We oppose all forms of refusal to serve, but beyond that, everything must stop, the economy must stop, the Knesset must stop, the courts must stop, and the local authorities must stop. It's not just the universities, the schools must also be shut down.
In this context, hundreds of protesters were repressed by the Israeli police on their way to the residence of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. According to local media, some of the protesters managed to get close to Netanyahu's residence, where clashes with police forces took place. The protest was held after the Supreme Court issued an order to halt the dismissal of the head of Israel's internal spy agency, Ronen Bar. Since the outbreak of the Palestine-Israeli conflict, Netanyahu has fired or forced the resignation of senior officials. In Palestine, at least 30 people were killed and dozens wounded during overnight Israeli army attacks on the Gaza Strip and as part of the Zionist genocidal campaign. The total blockade imposed on the enclave has lasted 22 days, aggravating the humanitarian situation. Wafa news agency reported that 3 citizens were killed and others were wounded when occupation forces shelled a vehicle east of Khan Yunis. On the same day, an Israeli airstrike on displaced persons killed 2 citizens in the Tal al-Sultan neighborhood west of Rafah. Since Tuesday morning, the Israeli occupation has resumed its genocidal aggressions in the Gaza Strip, which as of Thursday night had caused approximately 600 martyrs and more than 1,000 wounded, most of whom are children, women and the elderly. The Palestinian movement Hamas confirms the death of one of its members during the new wave of Israeli attacks in Khan Yunis. The Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement Hamas, in a statement issued on Sunday, confirmed that a member of the movement's political bureau and legislative council, Salah al-Bardawil, has been killed in the Al-Mawasi area west of Khan Yunis. Al-Bardawil was one of the founders of the Islamic Party of National Salvation in 1996 and a representative in the National Assembly and the Central Assembly of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Israel bombed several areas in the early hours of Sunday morning and 18 people were killed in these attacks on houses and tents of Palestinian refugees. At least 7 people killed and 40 others were wounded in Israeli attacks on dozens of villages in southern Lebanon on Saturday. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, the deadliest attack took place in the city of Tulin, where 5 people were killed, including a girl, while 11 were injured, including 2 children. Israel carried out this series of attacks on the pretext of rocket fire from Lebanese territory. However, the Hezbollah movement denied any involvement, and experts called it a false flag attack. The ceasefire truce, which came into effect on last November 27th, has been violated almost daily by the Israeli regime, despite constant appeals by the Lebanese authorities to respect the agreement. France, Germany and the United Kingdom expressed their concern over renewed Israeli attacks on Gaza and called for an immediate return to the truce. The 3 countries urged Israel to fully respect international law and allow immediate humanitarian access to the Gaza Strip. In a joint statement, they stressed that the resumption of Israeli attacks is a dramatic setback for the people of Gaza, the hostages, their families and the entire region. On the other hand, on the statement, it was emphasized that the civilian population has the right to have peace and security, stressing that the conflict cannot be resolved by military means, as this will only lead to the death of more Palestinian civilians and Israeli hostages. The Russian Defense Ministry announced that the army had shot down some 59 Ukrainian drones in the southwest of the country. The ministry reportedly had shot down 29 unmanned aerial vehicles in Rostov region, 20 in Astrakhan, 3 in Volgograd and other regions. The entity further denounced that the attacks on civilians in Astrakhan region left damage to residential infrastructure, while Ukrainian forces hit to death a woman on their strikes on Rostov. The provinces bordering Ukraine had denounced the continuous impacts of projectiles and drone incursions, which forced the population to seek shelter elsewhere. And we have a second tour break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. Pope Francis has been discharged from the Gemelli Hospital after spending over a month hospitalized due to a respiratory infection. The Supreme Pontiff of the Catholic Church was hospitalized on February 14th due to a polymicrobial infection of his respiratory tract, with tests indicating a complex clinical picture for one of the oldest popes in the Church history. On Saturday, his medical team announced the Pope would be discharged from hospital on Sunday and would need 2 months of rest at the Vatican. Upon leaving, the 88-year-old greeted his well-wishers from a balcony at Gemelli Hospital. Many worshippers and people around the world united in prayers for the Pontiff's health to improve. The 28th edition of the Malaga Film Festival ended in Spain, where the film Deaf was the winner with 4 Biznaga Award. Deaf, which won Best Film, Best Actress, Best Actor and Audience Award, tells the story of Angela, a deaf woman who is having a baby with Hector, her hearing partner. The arrival of the child alters the couple's relationship and leads Angela to face the task of raising her daughter in a world that is not made for her. Also, 3 other films won the main awards of the festival: Los Tortuga, The Fury and Mold Looney, which closes this quad taken to statuettes. It is important to highlight that 3 of these 4 films were directed by women. On the other hand, the Golden Biznaga for the Best Ibero-American Film was awarded to Thief of Dogs by Vinco Salinas. On Saturday, Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi held the 6th China-Japan High-Level Economic Dialogue in Tokyo. During the meeting, the representative of the Asian giant said that since the normalization of diplomatic relations between China and Japan, bilateral trade has remained at a high level of $300 billion for 15 consecutive years. Wang also stated that both nations should maintain the tradition of promoting political relations through economic cooperation, dialogue and exchanges in all sectors as new engines of growth. China reaffirmed its economic policy aimed at boosting domestic consumption of the sessions of the China Development Forum 2025. The director of the Central Rural Leadership Group Office, Han Wengshu, granted that he will ramp up labor productivity in order to raise the incomes of urban and rural residents. The head explained that the next step would be to focus on key areas to stimulate national demand. In addition, the strategy of such office would boost breakthrough with a new view to increasing life quality of the elderly and stimulating economies in the health and sport areas. The Ecuadorian government registered a new league of oil derivatives in the Amazon province of Napo. The Ministry of Energy and Mines detailed that the personnel of the Ecuadorian Electric Corporation and Ecuador have been working on placing a floating barrier in the Coca River. The spill jeopardizes the infrastructure of the country's main hydroelectric plant, which is operational and generates 1,100 megawatts to the national power grid. In this context, on social media, citizens have questioned the government for justifying these events by they were intentionally triggered. On Sunday, March 23rd, is the World Meteorological Day, the date on which the World Meteorological Organization was created in 1950 in Geneva, Switzerland. The objective of this commemoration is to make the world population aware of the importance of caring for the climate and to warn about the effects of climate pollution. Meteorology studies the atmospheric changes that occur at all times using parameters such as air temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, wind, and precipitation. The objective of meteorology is to predict the weather in 24 or 48 hours and, to a lesser extent, to reduce a medium-term weather forecast. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.